Before anyone signs anything else, the lawyer said. I need to know why the wedding venue is in Mara's name. That was the moment my family stopped pretending they had only borrowed my future. My mother froze with fake tears still shining on her cheeks. My father's hand tightened around the pen like he could force the truth back into the paper. And my brother, the golden child whose dream wedding had already swallowed my college fund, looked at me for the first time, like I was no longer the quiet sister he could sacrifice and forget. They had sold my education for one perfect day. What they didn't know was that my grandmother had left me the one thing none of them could bully: guilt. Or steal away. The lawyer looked at my parents across his glass conference table and said, before anyone signs anything else, I need to know why the wedding venue is in your daughter's name. My mother stopped crying mid-sentence. My father's hand froze on the pen. And my brother, the golden child whose dream wedding had already eaten my college fund, whispered, that has to be a mistake. My name is Mara Ellis. I was 23 years old then, working the front desk at a small title company in Franklin, Tennessee, and pretending I was fine every time someone asked why I was not finishing my senior year at Belmont. I had practiced that smile so many times it barely felt like a lie anymore. I'm taking a break, I would say, as if breaks were supposed to feel like grief. The truth was simpler and uglier. My parents emptied the college fund my grandmother built for me before she died, and they used it to pay deposits on my brother's wedding. Not a small backyard wedding. Not a modest family gathering. A 500-guest live band. Champagne wall wedding at Willow Creek Manor, the most expensive venue in Williamson County. They told me it was temporary. They told me I was young, flexible, resilient. All the words people use when they want you to absorb damage quietly. My brother Ryan was getting married only once, they said. His fiancée came from a family with expectations, they said. My education could wait, they said. Nobody asked if my future could survive being delayed. I still remember the night they told me. I had come home for Sunday dinner with a grocery bag full of laundry and a folder of financial aid paperwork. My father was carving pot roast at the head of the table like he was about to bless us. My mother sat beside him with her lips pressed together, already looking wounded before I even knew she had hurt me. Ryan was there too, leaning back in his chair, scrolling through photos of floral arches and tasting menus. His fiancée, Kelsey, kept flashing her ring under the chandelier like the diamond needed witnesses. I thought we were talking about my tuition balance. I thought maybe my parents were going to help me make the next payment before the deadline. Instead, my father cleared his throat and said, Mara, we need you to be mature about something. That was always how it began in our house. Whenever they needed me to lose something, they called it maturity. Whenever Ryan wanted something, they called it family. I put my fork down before I knew why my stomach had started to turn. My mother reached across the table and touched my wrist with her cold fingers. Honey, we made a decision, she said. It is not ideal, but your brother's wedding has become more expensive than expected. She said it like the wedding had grown teeth in the night and attacked them. Like no one had chosen the imported orchids, the string quartet, or the manor rental. I asked what that had to do with me. Ryan Seahill, already annoyed, as if my confusion was selfish. My father said the college fund was family money, and that family money had to be used where the family needed it most. He said Belmont would still be there next year. He said I could work more hours, apply for loans, be practical. I remember the room going very still around me. The chandelier hummed. Kelsey clicked one acrylic nail against her wineglass. My mother kept rubbing my wrist like she was comforting me from some tragedy that had happened to both of us. But the tragedy had not happened to both of us. They had done it to me. Then invited me to dinner so I would chew politely while they explained why. The fund had been started by my grandmother, Evelyn. She was my father's mother. But she loved me in a way that never required performance. She used to tuck $20 bills into birthday cards and write, "For your escape hatch." When I was 12, She told me every girl needed one thing no one could take from her. Education, she said, was a door with a lock on the inside. After she died, my parents became careful with the way they talked about her. They praised her in public and ignored her wishes in private. My father said she would have understood. My mother said Grandma Evelyn cared about family unity. I wanted to ask if family unity meant taking from the quiet child to decorate the loud child's wedding aisle, but I did not say that. I was 21 then, and still trained in the old religion of our house. Do not embarrass your father. Do not upset your mother. Do not make Ryan feel guilty. Smile when something hurts. Because if you cry, they will call you dramatic. And if you stay calm, they will call you cold. Ryan leaned forward and said, Mara. And friend. Come on. You're good at school. You'll figure it out. He said it with the lazy confidence of someone who had never had to figure out anything without a net. When his truck broke down, Dad paid for repairs. When he failed 2 community college classes, Mom called it stress. When I got a scholarship, they said I was lucky, Kelsey added. Besides, a wedding is a once-in-a-lifetime event. College is just ongoing. She laughed softly, like she had made a cute point. My mother smiled at her. My father nodded. That was when I understood I was not in a discussion. I was in a ceremony. My future had already been sacrificed. And they were only waiting for me to bow my head. I asked how much was gone. My father looked irritated by the number. As if numbers were rude. My mother said, Not gone. Honey. Reallocated. That word followed me for months. Reallocated. As if my tuition had wandered off voluntarily and put on a veil. As if my grandmother's savings had simply chosen a better party. It was $68. Ling ling ling. Not all of it in cash, but enough to cover my remaining tuition. Housing. Textbooks. Certification fees. And the unpaid balance that had been keeping me awake for weeks. My grandmother had built that fund slowly. With certificates of deposit, savings bonds, and an old investment account my parents barely understood until they needed it. I stared at my father and asked if he had the legal right to take it. He stiffened. Do not talk to me like I'm some criminal. He said, I am your father. In our family, that sentence was supposed to end every argument. I am your father meant I could raise my voice. I am your mother meant I could rewrite your pain. I am your brother meant I could take what I wanted and call it love. The next week, my school account went unpaid. 2 weeks later, my housing balance was past due. By the end of the semester, I packed my dorm room into trash bags while my roommate avoided looking at me. I told everyone I was taking time off to save money. I did not tell them my parents had turned my last year of college into a dessert table. The first time I saw Willow Creek Manor, it was on Kelsey's Instagram story. White columns, green lawns, a lake shaped like a mirror, and an oak-lined driveway that looked like something from a Southern bridal magazine. She captioned it, Our dream venue is officially ours for the day. I watched the video 3 times. Not because I wanted to, but because pain sometimes makes you study the weapon. I recognized the place, though I did not understand why at first. There was something about the stone fountain near the entrance, the way the driveway curved around it, the blue shutters on the carriage house. It tugged at a memory from childhood. My grandmother's hand in mine, a summer dress sticking to my knees, lemonade in a paper cup. When I was little, Grandma Evelyn used to take me for drives on Saturday mornings. She called them secret adventures, though mostly we just went to estate sales and bakeries. Once, when I was 8 or 9, she drove me through the gates of a property called Willow Creek. It was not a wedding venue then. It was worn down, quiet, almost abandoned. But she looked at it like it was a cathedral. She told me she had worked there as a housekeeper when she was 17. She said the family who owned it treated her kindly when kindness was not guaranteed. Years later, when the property went into foreclosure, She said she bought a little piece of memory from it. I thought she meant a chair or a dish set. Children do not understand how adults hide entire stories inside casual sentences. After my parents took my fund, I started working full-time at Hargrove Title and Escrow. It was supposed to be temporary. But temporary becomes permanent fast when bills are waiting. My job was not glamorous. I answered calls, scanned closing packets, ordered county records, and made coffee strong enough to qualify as punishment. But I learned things there. Quiet things. Useful things. I learned how ownership did not care about who yelled the loudest. I learned deeds outlived tantrums. I learned signatures had dates. Trusts had rules. And family stories were often less reliable than county records printed on cheap paper. I learned that people could sit in a conference room wearing expensive watches and still be undone by one overlooked document. My boss, Mr. Hargrove, was a calm man in his 60s who treated paperwork like weather patterns. He could look at a chain of title and know where the storm had started. He never asked why I flinched when parents came in to transfer property to sons, or why I stayed late reading old deed books after my shift. He simply showed me how to search properly. One Friday afternoon, while pulling records for a commercial refinance, I typed Willow Creek Manor into the county database. I told myself it was curiosity. That was not entirely true. Curiosity does not make your hands shake. Curiosity does not make you hold your breath while a property card loads line by line. When the owner information appeared, I thought the system had glitched. The property was held by something called E. Holdings. The mailing address was old, tied to a P.O. box my grandmother once used. Beneath that, there was a notation for a beneficiary transfer recorded years earlier. The scan was blurry. So I opened the document image. My grandmother's name appeared first. Then my name. Mara Jean Ellis. I did not understand it at first. Not fully. My brain rejected the shape of it because the shape was too impossible. I printed the document and sat in the supply room with the paper on my lap. The old copier hummed beside me. Someone laughed near the front desk. I read the same sentence over and over until the words stopped swimming. Grandma Evelyn had not just left me a college fund. She had created a small holding company years before she died, and Willow Creek Manor was tied to it through an old purchase option, later converted into ownership when the original developer defaulted. The paperwork was complicated. But one thing was not. My name was on it. Not Ryan's. Not my father's. Mine. I wanted to call my parents immediately. I wanted to ask if they knew. I wanted to scream so loudly that the expensive chandeliers at Willow Creek would tremble before Ryan ever walked down the aisle. But I had been raised by people who turned my pain into evidence against me. So I did the one thing they had never taught me to do. I stayed quiet. I took the document to Mr. Hargrove after everyone else left. I expected him to tell me I was misunderstanding it, that there was some legal explanation that would shrink the miracle back down to nothing. He adjusted his glasses, read for a long time, then looked at me over the page. Mara, he said carefully. This is not nothing. That sentence changed the temperature of my life. Not loudly. Not with fireworks. Just a small click. Like a locked door opening somewhere inside my chest. Mr. Hargrove told me not to speak to my family until I had a lawyer review everything. He said old property structures could be messy, especially when relatives had reasons to pretend they were not. I found the lawyer through him. Her name was Lydia Grant, and she had silver hair cut sharp at her jaw and a voice that made people stop interrupting. She asked for every document I had. My grandmother's letters, bank statements, the fund paperwork, the Willow Creek records, the wedding contract if I could get it. I laughed once, bitterly, and told her my family did not share paperwork with me unless they needed my signature. Lydia did not laugh. She just said, then wait until they do. That was the first time anyone had ever made patience sound like power. Not weakness. Not avoidance. Power. So I waited. I worked. I paid my rent late twice. I watched Kelsey post bridal updates funded by the life my grandmother tried to give me. I watched my mother comment heart emojis under every photo. Then, 3 months before the wedding, my father called me for the first time in weeks and said, "We need you at a meeting on Monday." No hello. No apology. Just need. He said there was an issue with the venue paperwork. Something minor. Something the lawyer wanted cleared up before final payment. My brother needed me to be cooperative. He said. I asked why I needed to be there. My father exhaled through his nose. Because, for some ridiculous reason, your name came up. Behind him. I heard my mother say, "Tell her not to make this about herself." And in that moment, standing in my tiny kitchen with a cracked mug in my hand, I realized they still believed the old version of me was coming. They thought I would walk into that conference room ashamed, grateful to be included, desperate to be forgiven for being inconvenient. They thought I would sign whatever they placed in front of me because that was what I had always done. They thought taking my future had taught me my place. They had no idea my grandmother had left me a door with a lock on the inside. Monday morning. I wore the plain navy dress I used for difficult closings at work. Not my nicest dress. Not my cheapest one either. Something quiet enough that nobody could accuse me of trying to make a scene. And clean enough that I would not feel small sitting across from people who had mistaken money for authority. Before I left, I placed Grandma Evelyn's letters in a folder and slid it into my tote bag. Willow Creek Manor's administrative office was in the renovated carriage house behind the main building. I arrived 10 minutes early and parked near a row of magnolia trees. For a while, I stayed in my car with both hands on the steering wheel, staring at the white columns in the distance. The place was even prettier in person. That hurt more than I expected. My stolen future had good lighting. My parents arrived in my father's truck, followed by Ryan and Kelsey in her white SUV. Kelsey stepped out wearing sunglasses too large for her face and a cream sweater that looked soft enough to cost half my rent. Ryan kissed her forehead in the parking lot, then glanced at me like I was a bill he hoped someone else had paid. My mother saw me and immediately frowned. "Why are you dressed like that?" she asked. No hello. No hug. Just inspection. I looked down at my dress and said, "Like what?" She waved one hand. "Like you're going to work. This is a family matter," my father muttered. "Let's just get through this." Kelsey removed her sunglasses slowly and smiled without warmth. "Mara, please don't make this weird today." That sentence nearly made me laugh. Not because it was funny, but because it was perfect. They had emptied my college fund, humiliated me into silence, dragged me to a legal meeting about a venue tied to my name. And still, somehow I was the one with the power to make things weird. I nodded once and walked ahead of them into the carriage house. Lydia Grant was already inside. She sat at the conference table with a leather portfolio in front of her. Silver hair tucked behind one ear. Reading glasses low on her nose. My parents did not know she was my lawyer yet. They thought she worked for the venue or maybe the title company. Lydia looked up as I entered and gave me the smallest nod. So small, nobody else caught it. There was another lawyer there too. A man named Peter Sloan, representing Willow Creek's event management company. He had a stack of contracts, a yellow legal pad, and the anxious expression of someone who had found a crack in a deal everyone expected to be simple. He invited us to sit. My father took the chair at the head of the table without being asked. Peter explained that, during final review, the venue's management company discovered an ownership issue. The event contract had been signed by Kelsey and Ryan as clients, and my father had paid most of the deposits. But the underlying property approval required consent from the owner of record or authorized representative. My father waved a hand like he was swatting a fly. "Fine. Get whoever that is on the phone." Peter looked at me, then back at his papers. "That is why Miss Ellis was asked to attend." The room shifted around that sentence. My mother sat straighter. Ryan blinked. Kelsey's smile disappeared in pieces, like lights turning off down a hallway. My father looked at me for the first time that morning with something sharper than annoyance. I don't understand, he said. Peter turned a page. The property has an ownership structure connected to E. Holdings. And Ms. Mara Ellis appears as the current beneficial owner, with authority over event use approvals. We need to verify whether she consents to the existing contract terms and whether prior payments were made under correct assumptions. For several seconds, nobody spoke. I watched my mother's face try to rearrange itself into innocence. Ryan looked from me to Kelsey, then to Dad, as if one of them might wake him from this inconvenience. Kelsey's voice came out thin. Beneficial owner of the whole venue. Peter hesitated. That is what the recorded documents suggest. Pending confirmation. My father laughed once. It was not humor. It was a warning. That's impossible. Mara doesn't own anything. She rents a shoebox and answers phones. My face burned. But I did not move. Lydia set her pen down softly. Mr. Ellis. I represent Mara. I would advise you to be careful about making statements that could be interpreted as intimidation. My mother turned toward me so quickly her earrings swung. You brought a lawyer. The betrayal in her voice was almost impressive. She sounded like I had stolen something from them by refusing to walk in unprotected. I looked at her and said, yes. One word. No apology tucked behind it. My father's jaw tightened. And Ryan muttered, unbelievable. Kelsey leaned forward. Palms flat on the table. This wedding is in less than 3 months. My family has booked hotels. We have invitations out. We have vendors. You cannot just suddenly claim you own the place. Lydia opened her folder. Mara is not suddenly claiming anything. The ownership documents were recorded years ago. What is sudden is everyone noticing. My father pointed at the paperwork. My mother would never have done that. Lydia did not blink. Your mother signed it. My mother's lips parted. Evelyn was old. She was confused near the end. That was the first truly ugly thing said in that room. Not the loudest. Not the most dramatic. But ugly in a clean, polished way. They could steal from Grandma's wishes. Then insult her mind to justify it. Lydia slid a copy of the document across the table. The signatures were notarized 11 years before her death. There are also letters explaining her intentions. My father did not touch the paper. He stared at it like it might burn him. Ryan grabbed it instead. Scanned the first page. And said, so what? It's probably some technicality. Mara's not going to ruin my wedding over a technicality. There it was. Not confusion. Not remorse. Not even curiosity about how my grandmother had protected something for me. Just the assumption that my role, once again, was to step aside so Ryan could keep walking. I looked at him and remembered him at 18, handing me his dirty dishes because Mom said I was better at helping. Some patterns begin small enough to be mistaken for personality. Peter cleared his throat. The issue is not only consent. There is also a pending final payment and a required venue owner acknowledgement. If Ms. Ellis does not sign, the company cannot proceed under the current contract. Kelsey whispered something under her breath. My mother reached for tissues. Though no tears had fallen yet. She was preparing the stage. Mara, Mom said softly. Please. This is your brother's wedding. The softness was worse than shouting. It was the voice she used when she wanted witnesses to see her as wounded and me as cruel. I know you've been hurt about school. But this is not the time to punish everyone. Family does not do that. She looked around the table. Inviting agreement. I waited before answering. Not long enough to be theatrical. Just long enough to choose accuracy over emotion. Family also does not take $68. 0, 0, 0 from a dead woman's education fund and call it reallocation. My father's face darkened. Ryan said, oh my God. Are we still doing this? Kelsey snapped. This is exactly what I was afraid of. My father slammed his hand on the table. You will not embarrass this family in front of strangers. The sound cracked through the room. Peter startled. Lydia did not. She simply turned one page in her notes. I looked at my father's hand, broad and tense against the polished wood, and realized I was not as afraid as I used to be. Fear was still there, but it was no longer driving. I'm not embarrassing the family, I said. I'm telling the truth in a room where the truth matters. My mother finally produced tears then. 2 clean lines down her cheeks. We did what we had to do, she said. Ryan's future mattered too. I nodded slowly. Apparently his flowers mattered more than my degree. Ryan stood up halfway from his chair. That is not fair. The word fair landed so badly I almost smiled. Fair was their favorite word after family. Fair meant Ryan should have the big bedroom because he was older. Fair meant I should babysit for free because I was responsible. Fair meant he got a truck and I got advice. Fair meant my grandmother's money became a group resource the moment he needed a chandelier. Kelsey's voice went cold. Mara. Let me be very clear. If you refuse to sign and this wedding falls apart, you will be the reason our families are humiliated. I studied her face. She was not crying. She was calculating. Maybe she loved Ryan. Maybe she loved the wedding more. Either way. She had placed herself comfortably on top of my loss and called it a floor. Lydia asked for a recess. Peter agreed immediately, grateful for any excuse to breathe. My family stayed seated as Lydia led me into a smaller side office, lined with filing cabinets and framed photographs of brides under the oak trees. The moment the door closed, my legs shook so hard I had to grip the back of a chair. Lydia's voice softened. You are doing well. I shook my head. I don't feel like I am. She placed the documents on the desk between us. Doing well does not always feel powerful. Sometimes it feels like not running out of the room. That sentence stayed with me. It was probably the closest thing to tenderness she allowed herself before returning to facts. She explained my options again. I could consent. Refuse. Renegotiate. Require reimbursement. Or delay, until the ownership structure was fully confirmed by court if challenged. I asked what happened if I refused completely. She said the wedding contract could collapse, and the management company might refund part of the deposits depending on vendor deadlines. But my family could face significant losses. I thought that would feel satisfying. It did not. It felt heavy. Not because they deserved mercy, but because every option still placed the emotional cost on me. If I signed, I betrayed myself. If I refused, they would call me vindictive for the rest of my life. If I asked for reimbursement, they would act as if I had put a price on family. Though they had already priced me at $68. Leaning, I asked Lydia what Grandma Evelyn intended. She opened another folder and handed me a copy of one letter. Written in my grandmother's looping handwriting. It began. For Mara. When she is old enough to stop mistaking endurance for love. I read that line 3 times. My throat closed so tightly I could barely breathe. The letter said Willow Creek was never meant to be a burden. It was meant to be leverage. A word my grandmother used before I understood its value. She wrote that people who enjoy taking from quiet women often stop only when quiet women have something they cannot take. She hoped the college fund would be enough. If it was not, she wrote, Willow Creek should remind me that belonging could be recorded, witnessed, and defended. I cried then. But only for a minute. Not the helpless kind of crying my mother could weaponize. The private kind. The kind that leaves you clearer afterward. I wiped my face, folded the letter carefully, and looked at Lydia. I don't want to destroy the wedding just to hurt them. She nodded. Then decide what protects you, not what punishes them. When we returned to the conference room, the atmosphere had changed. My father had been whispering with Ryan. My mother sat red-eyed beside Kelsey, who was typing furiously on her phone. Peter looked like he wished the whole property would sink into the lake. Lydia sat first. I remained standing for a moment, because sitting felt too much like surrender. My father spoke before anyone else could. We discussed it, and were willing to acknowledge that maybe mistakes were made. The word maybe did a lot of work. He leaned back, trying to look reasonable. But this is bigger than old grievances. We need you to sign today. After the wedding, we can talk about school. After the wedding, I looked at Ryan. He did not meet my eyes. Kelsey did. Hers were bright and hard. My mother whispered, "Please don't make your brother suffer because you're angry with us." That was the old trap. Polished and ready. If I objected, Ryan suffered. If they stole, I was angry. If I protected myself, I was cruel. I sat down and opened my folder. "I'll sign a conditional approval," I said. "Not the one you brought." My father's expression flickered. "What conditions?" Lydia answered before he could challenge me directly. "Reimbursement of the education fund amount within 30 days. Written acknowledgement that the funds were withdrawn without Mara's informed consent. And a revised venue agreement naming Mara as owner representative." Kelsey made a sound like a laugh cut in half. "You want us to pay you $68,000 before our wedding?" I looked at her. "No. I want my grandmother's education fund restored." Ryan leaned forward. "We don't have that kind of cash sitting around," I said. "Then you should not have spent it." The room went silent again. That silence felt different from the first one. The first had been shock. This one had edges. My father's voice dropped low. "You listen to me. You would have nothing without this family." There it was. The anchor sentence of my childhood. Nothing. Every achievement I had made was luck, help, or attitude. Every sacrifice they demanded was proof I belonged. I looked at him and said, "Then it should be easy for you to plan the wedding without me." His face changed then. Not anger exactly. Recognition. He recognized that the old buttons were not working. And for the first time in my life, he did not know which one to press next. That frightened him more than any shouting would have. Peter suggested everyone take the proposed terms home and reconvene within a week. Lydia agreed. My family did not. But they had no better choice. As we walked out, my mother caught my arm in the hallway. Her grip was tighter than it looked. "I do not know who you think you are right now," she whispered. "But this is not how a daughter behaves." I gently removed her hand from my arm. My fingers were cold, but steady. "Maybe not the daughter you trained," I said, "but I'm still Grandma Evelyn's granddaughter." Her face went pale at that. And for 1 second, I saw something other than anger. Fear. Maybe. Or memory. Then it was gone. Replaced by the familiar wounded stare. Ryan followed me into the parking lot. "Mara." "Wait." I stopped beside my car. He looked uncomfortable. Which for Ryan usually meant he wanted sympathy without accountability. "Look. I get that you're upset. But Kelsey's parents are already judging us. Dad's stressed. Mom's a mess. Can't you just be decent for once?" He shoved his hands into his pockets like he was the one carrying weight. "For once?" I asked. He sighed. "You know what I mean. You always make things harder by acting like nobody cares about you." That sentence hit lower than I expected. Because some part of me, some foolish, bruised part, still wanted my brother to say he was sorry. Not perfectly. Not dramatically. Just enough to prove he had noticed I was a person. Instead, he looked past me toward the manor and said, "It's one day." "Mara." I followed his gaze. One day. That was what they called it because they only counted the wedding. They did not count the semester I lost. The degree I paused. The shame I swallowed. The rent I struggled to pay. Or the grandmother whose wishes they stepped over in dress shoes. I got into my car without answering. As I pulled away, I saw Kelsey standing by the fountain. Phone raised. Recording herself with the manor behind her. Later that night, she posted a story with soft piano music and the caption, "Some people test your joy right before your blessing." My mother shared it. Ryan added a heart. My father did not post anything. But silence can endorse plenty. By the next morning, cousins were texting me. Then an aunt. Then 2 family friends from church. The messages sounded different, but they all carried the same assignment. Be the bigger person. Do not ruin your brother's special day. Money comes and goes. Family is forever. Nobody asked why forever only seemed to apply when I was the one being drained. I did not answer most of them. I sent every message to Lydia. She told me to save everything. Screenshots, voicemails, emails, social media posts. Not because we planned to attack, she said, but because people who rewrite reality in private often become careless in public. I made a folder on my laptop named Willow. Then I backed it up twice. A week later, my father refused the terms. He did not call me. He sent Lydia a letter through a lawyer he had hired in anger, claiming my grandmother had been manipulated. The ownership was questionable, and the college fund had been used with implied family consent. That phrase was almost beautiful in its dishonesty. Implied family consent meant they had never asked because they knew I would say no. The letter also suggested that if I interfered with the wedding, my parents would pursue damages for emotional distress and reputational harm. Lydia read that part aloud in her office and gave a dry little smile. They are threatening you with the consequences of their own decisions. I sat across from her, hands folded tight in my lap, and said, "That's been our family system for 23 years. The next month was pressure. Not loud every day, but constant." My mother left voicemails that began with sobbing and ended with blame. My father sent short messages that sounded like commands. Ryan alternated between insults and fake nostalgia, sending childhood photos with captions like, "Remember when we used to be close, we were never close." I had simply been useful. Kelsey posted more. Never my name, but enough details that people knew. She wrote about jealousy, negative energy, and protecting bridal peace. Her friends commented prayers and knife emojis. One of them called me a bitter little sister trying to steal attention. I stared at that comment for a long time, then saved it to the Willow folder. At work, I kept learning title searches. I learned to spot missing signatures, old liens, strange transfers, and the small gaps people assume nobody will check. At night, I read Grandma Evelyn's letters. There were 6 in total. Some were practical, some tender. In one, she wrote that my father had always confused obedience with respect. In another, she apologized for not seeing sooner how lonely I was becoming in that house. Those letters did not make me invincible. Some nights, I still sat on my kitchen floor and cried because I missed the version of my family I had tried so hard to earn. I missed a mother who might choose me without witnesses. I missed a father who could be proud without ownership. I missed a brother who saw my sacrifice and felt ashamed instead of entitled. But missing something does not make it real. That was the hardest lesson. Grief is not only for people who die. Sometimes you grieve the family you invented to survive the family you had. And once you start telling the truth about them, even privately, you cannot fully go back to pretending the house was warm. 6 weeks before the wedding, Lydia called me at work and told me to come to her office after closing. Her voice was calm, but there was a current beneath it. When I arrived, she had 2 documents spread across her desk. One was the original venue agreement. The other was a newly filed amendment someone had attempted to submit through a local notary. My name was on the amendment. My signature was at the bottom. I stared at it for a few seconds before my brain caught up. It was not my signature. It was close enough to insult me. The M looped wrong. The final S in Ellis was too neat. Whoever signed it had seen my handwriting, but had not lived inside my hand. Lydia watched my face. "Did you sign this?" I shook my head. "No." My voice sounded distant, like it belonged to someone across the room. She nodded once, already reaching for her phone. "Then, your family just changed the nature of this situation." I looked down at the forged signature again, and something inside me went very quiet. That was the moment the story stopped being about a wedding. Lydia did not let me touch the forged amendment. She slid it into a clear sleeve as if it were something contaminated, then placed it beside the copy of my driver's license they had attached to the filing. That was what made my stomach turn. Someone had not only copied my name, someone had found my identification. Or a scan of it. And used it like I was already erased. Think carefully, Lydia said. Who had access to your signature and your ID? I knew the answer before she finished asking. My parents kept old family documents in a fireproof box in their hall closet. Birth certificates, insurance papers, school forms, copies of licenses from when they helped me fill out financial aid paperwork. I had given them those copies because I trusted them. Trust, I had learned, could become evidence. I drove home that night without music. Every red light felt too long. Every green light too sudden. When I reached my apartment, I locked the door. Then locked it again. Even though the second turn did nothing. My phone lit up on the counter with a message from Ryan. Dad says you're still dragging this out. Stop before everyone hates you. I stared at it and felt strangely calm. The next morning, Lydia filed a formal objection to the amendment and requested the notary's record book. She also sent notice to Willow Creek's management company that any event approval using my alleged signature was disputed. Peter Sloan called her within 2 hours. By lunch, the venue had frozen all wedding-related processing until ownership authority could be verified. By dinner, my family knew. My mother called first. I let it go to voicemail. Then my father. Then Ryan. Then Kelsey from an unknown number. As if changing the number would change my boundaries. I listened to none of them until Lydia told me it was useful to know what they were saying. So I sat at my kitchen table, opened my laptop, and played my father's voicemail through the speaker. You have lost your mind, he said. His voice was low, controlled. The way it sounded when he wanted people to think rage was dignity. Do you understand what you've done? Do you understand the embarrassment you are causing? Call me tonight, or I will come over there. And we will settle this like a family. I saved the file. My hands did not shake until after. My mother's voicemail was softer and worse. Mata. Sweetheart. I know you're hurting. But this path you're on is ugly. Your grandmother would be heartbroken to see you use her name to divide us. She cried then. But carefully. With pauses. Kelsey's mother is asking questions. Ryan hasn't slept. Your father's blood pressure is up. Please stop punishing us. Ryan's message was short. You know what, keep the stupid money. Just sign the venue release. Kelsey is devastated. If she leaves me because of this, that's on you. I played that one twice. Not because it hurt the most, but because it revealed the most. Even then. After forgery. After theft. After pressure. His fear was not that he had wronged me. His fear was that consequences might inconvenience him. The notary record arrived 3 days later. Lydia called me into her office again. The notary was a woman named Bethany Cole, working out of a shipping store 20 minutes from my parents' house. According to her log, I had appeared in person on a Thursday afternoon, shown my Tennessee driver's license, and signed the amendment. The problem was simple. I had been at work that entire day, at Hargrove Title. We used keycard access and time-stamped closing software. I had checked in at 8:02 a.m., processed 3 files, scanned 2 closing packets, and clocked out at 5:41 p.m. Mr. Hargrove wrote a sworn statement within an hour of Lydia asking. He did not dramatize it. He simply attached records, proving I had never left the office long enough to become the woman in that notary log. Then came the shipping store footage. I expected some blurry angle, some useless gray smear of a person in sunglasses. Instead, the camera above the counter showed everything clearly enough to make my chest tighten. My mother stood beside the counter in her church cardigan, holding a folder. Next to her was Kelsey, wearing a baseball cap low over her face and my old college sweatshirt. The footage had no sound. But it did not need sound. Bethany Cole looked at the license copy, looked at Kelsey, then looked down at the paperwork. My mother leaned forward, smiling that warm, social smile she gave strangers. Kelsey signed my name. Not well. Not confidently. But she signed it. My mother patted her arm afterward, like they had completed an errand. I watched the clip once, then looked away. Lydia stopped the video. "We do not have to decide everything today," she said. But something had already decided itself inside me. There are betrayals you can explain as panic, fear, bad judgment, family pressure. Then there are betrayals that require planning, costumes, documents, and a calm smile at a counter. I thought I would feel rage toward Kelsey first. I did not. Kelsey had been selfish and cruel, but she had entered the family late. My mother knew my handwriting from kindergarten homework. She knew my birthday, my middle name, my childhood fears, the way I took my coffee, the fact that I kept sentimental cards in shoeboxes, and she still stood there while another woman borrowed my life. Lydia said we had options now. Civil claims, possible criminal referral, injunctive relief, notification to the venue, the management company, the notary commission, and anyone relying on the false amendment. Her words were precise, almost cool, but I heard the force under them. The leverage point was no longer only ownership. It was proof that they had tried to steal the authority they could not bully out of me. I asked what would happen if I reported it. Lydia folded her hands. There could be serious consequences for whoever participated. She did not soften it. That includes your mother and Kelsey. Potentially anyone who directed them. I nodded, though my throat felt full of sand. And if I don't? She looked at me for a long moment. Then they learn that forgery works when enough guilt is applied afterward. That sentence stayed with me harder than any legal threat. I carried it to work, to the grocery store, into bed. They learn that forgery works. They learn that tears erase signatures. They learn that daughters are safer targets than strangers. I thought about Grandma Evelyn writing that people who take from quiet women stop only when quiet women have something they cannot take. The next family message came from my Aunt Denise, my father's sister. She had always presented herself as neutral, which usually meant she waited to see who had power before choosing a side. Her text said, "I heard things are getting legal. Before this goes too far. Remember, your mother made mistakes out of love." I typed 3 responses and deleted them all. Instead, I sent one sentence. "Did love wear my college sweatshirt to forge my signature?" She did not answer for 11 minutes. Then the typing bubbles appeared and vanished twice. Finally she wrote, "What are you talking about? That was the first crack outside the conference rooms and private calls." I did not send the footage. I sent her Lydia's office number. By the end of that week, the family narrative began to split. Some relatives still believed I was jealous. Some went quiet. A few called my mother and asked questions she was not prepared to answer without crying. Kelsey deleted 3 Instagram stories. Ryan posted a vague quote about loyalty, then removed it after someone commented, "Didn't your fiancé pretend to be your sister?" Lydia advised me not to engage online. I listened. Silence felt different this time. Before, silence had been obedience. Now it was strategy. I was not hiding. I was letting documents speak in rooms where manipulation had no oxygen. Every voicemail, every deleted post, every timestamp went into the Willow folder. Not because I wanted to destroy them, but because I was done being destroyed without a record. Then my father came to my apartment. I saw his truck through the blinds at 718 on a Thursday evening. My stomach dropped so fast I had to sit down. He knocked hard. 3 times. Then called my name through the door. "Mara. Open up." I did not move. He knocked again. "Do not make me stand in the hallway like a stranger." That almost worked. Not because I wanted to open the door, but because old training lives in the body longer than the mind. My hand actually reached for the lock before I stopped it. I stepped back, picked up my phone, and called Lydia. She answered on the second ring. I whispered, My father is here. Her voice sharpened. Do not open the door. My father kept talking. Your mother is sick over this. Ryan is humiliated. Kelsey's parents are threatening to pull support. You are tearing apart everything your grandmother built. I stood in my living room, barefoot on cheap carpet, and watched the doorknob as if it were a living thing. Lydia stayed on the line. Tell him. Through the door. To leave. She said. I swallowed. Dad. Leave. My voice sounded small, but it carried. The hallway went quiet. Then he laughed once. The same humorless laugh from the conference room. So now your lawyer tells you how to speak to your father. I pressed my palm against the wall to steady myself. All communication goes through Lydia. He hit the door with his fist. Not enough to break it. Enough to remind me he could. I called the police non-emergency line after Lydia told me to. By the time an officer arrived, my father had gone. But my neighbor Mrs. Alvarez had recorded part of it from her doorway. She was 72. Widowed. And did not like my father's tone. She sent me the video with a message that said, Honey, I know men like that. Keep this. I cried when I read it. 2 days later, Lydia sent my father's lawyer a cease and desist letter regarding harassment, false filings, and third-party pressure. She also gave them a deadline. They could restore the education fund, withdraw any claim to venue authority, and agree in writing not to proceed using forged documents, or we would file for immediate injunctive relief and refer the matter to the appropriate authorities. For the first time, they asked for a meeting instead of demanding one. Not at the manor. Not at my parents' house. Lydia chose her office, where the chairs were uncomfortable and the windows looked over a parking lot instead of oak trees. Neutral ground. No chandeliers. No family photographs. No place for my mother to perform grief as if the room belonged to her. The meeting was set for the following Tuesday. On Monday night, Ryan called from a number I did not recognize. I almost ignored it. Then answered, because Lydia had said, sometimes people reveal useful things when they think they are bypassing lawyers. His voice was rough. Mara. Please don't bring the video tomorrow. I closed my eyes. Not sorry. Just please don't bring the video. Why? I asked. He exhaled. Because it will destroy Mom. I waited. He added. And Kelsey. Still nothing about me. Nothing about my degree. Nothing about Grandma Evelyn. I looked at the folder on my table. The one with the letters and records and printed screenshots. Ryan. I said. Did you know they were going to forge my signature? The silence was long enough to answer before he did. I knew Mom was going to fix it. My chest went cold. Fix it how he snapped then. Defensive and frightened. I didn't ask for details. Okay, Dad said you were being irrational. Mom said you would come around eventually. Kelsey was desperate. Everyone was desperate. That word again. Desperate. As if desperation were a permission slip. I said. You let them use me. His voice cracked. But not with remorse. With panic. You don't understand what pressure feels like when everything is on you. For a second, I could not speak. Then I laughed quietly. And it surprised both of us. Ryan. I said. Everything has been on me since I was old enough to carry what you dropped. He hung up first. I saved the call log and wrote down everything I remembered while it was fresh. Then I sat at my kitchen table until midnight. Reading Grandma Evelyn's first letter again. For Mara. When she is old enough to stop mistaking endurance for love. I used to think endurance was my best quality. Now I wondered how much of it had simply been captivity with a prettier name. The next morning, I arrived at Lydia's office early. I brought the willow folder. Grandma's letters. My work records. The notary footage. The voicemails. The screenshots. And Mrs. Alvarez's hallway video. It fit into one tote bag. That almost made me angry. Years of being minimized. and the evidence weighed less than a bag of groceries. My family arrived together. My father looked older than he had 2 months before, but not softer. My mother wore pale blue and no makeup. A choice so deliberate it was almost theatrical. Ryan looked exhausted. Kelsey's engagement ring was still on her hand, but she kept twisting it around her finger. Their lawyer came behind them, carrying a briefcase and the tight expression of a man who had finally seen the footage. Before we went into the conference room, my mother stepped toward me. Lydia shifted slightly, but I raised one hand to show I was all right. Mom's eyes filled instantly. "Mara," she whispered. "Whatever happens today, I need you to know I love you." I looked at her face, searching for the place where those words were supposed to enter me. For years, I would have accepted that sentence like medicine. Bitter, but necessary. That morning, it sounded like a key trying an old lock. "It did not fit anymore," I said, quietly enough that only she and Lydia heard. "Love does not need my signature forged." My mother flinched as if I had slapped her. But I had not touched her. I had only stopped cushioning the truth. Inside the conference room, Lydia placed her folder on the table. Their lawyer opened his briefcase, then closed it again without removing anything. That told me more than his face did. My father sat across from me, arms folded. Ryan stared at the tabletop. Kelsey looked at the door, as if she might leave before the room became real. Lydia began calmly. "Before we discuss any resolution, we are going to establish what happened, what documents exist, and what choices remain." She looked at my family, one by one. No one in this room should mistake Mara's restraint for weakness. My father's mouth tightened. My mother began to cry silently. Kelsey stopped twisting her ring. I opened Grandma Evelyn's letter in front of me. Not because I planned to read it aloud, but because I wanted her handwriting near my hands. The room smelled like coffee, printer ink, and expensive fear. For the first time since Sunday, dinners became rituals of surrender. I was not waiting for my family to decide what I deserved. They had sold my college fund for a wedding. Then they tried to steal my name to save it. And now, with the truth stacked neatly in front of me, they were about to learn that the daughter they trained to stay quiet had finally learned how to let silence end. Lydia did not begin with accusations. She began with dates. The date my grandmother created E. Holdings. The date Willow Creek Manor transferred into that structure. The date my name became the beneficial owner. The date my college fund was drained. The date my family was notified that I had not consented to the wedding contract. Then, finally, the date someone walked into a shipping store and signed my name while I was at work. My father interrupted before Lydia reached the video. "We are not criminals," he said. His voice had that old iron in it, the one that used to make everyone at our dinner table sit straighter. Lydia looked at him calmly. "No one asked you to label yourself, Mr. Ellis. We are discussing conduct." Their lawyer shifted in his chair. And for the first time, I saw my father notice that the room was not obeying him. Lydia opened her laptop and turned it toward them. The shipping store footage began without sound. My mother appeared first, small and pale, on the screen, carrying the folder. Then Kelsey stepped into frame wearing my old sweatshirt. Her cap pulled low. Ryan made a broken sound beside her. My mother covered her mouth. But she did not look surprised. That mattered. Surprise and shame are not the same thing, Kelsey whispered. "Turn it off." Lydia did not. The video showed the license copy, the paper sliding across the counter, Kelsey bending to sign. It showed my mother smiling at the notary. It showed the little pat on Kelsey's arm afterward. Such a small gesture. Such a motherly gesture. That was the part that hurt more than the fake signature. When the clip ended, no one spoke. My mother cried into a tissue. But the sound was different now. Smaller. No audience could turn this into sacrifice. My father's face had gone gray with anger. But anger had nowhere to land. Ryan stared at Kelsey as if he had never seen her before. Though I wondered if what shocked him was the lie or the fact that the lie had been recorded, their lawyer cleared his throat. We may be able to resolve this privately. Lydia folded her hands. That depends on your definition of resolve. He glanced at my parents. Then at me. The family wants to avoid unnecessary escalation. I almost laughed at that phrase. Unnecessary escalation. As if theft, intimidation, and forgery had been reasonable steps. And my response was the dangerous part. Lydia slid a document across the table. These are Mara's terms. My father reached for it. But his lawyer got there first. He read silently, lips tightening with each line. Restoration of the full $68,000 education fund. Payment of Mara's legal fees. Written withdrawal of the forged amendment. Written acknowledgement that Mara had not consented to the withdrawal of her college funds or the attempted venue authorization. There was more. No contact except through counsel for 90 days. No social media posts. Direct or indirect. About me or the dispute. No use of Willow Creek Manor for the wedding unless I signed a new agreement after all terms were completed. And a notarized statement identifying who participated in preparing, presenting, and signing the false amendment. Kelsey started crying then. Real crying. I think. Not pretty. Not controlled. If we sign that, my parents will know, she said. My voice came out before Lydia could answer. They should. Kelsey looked at me like I had become cruel. Maybe I had. In her eyes, people who benefit from your silence often experience your honesty as violence. Ryan leaned forward. Elbows on the table. Mara. Please. His voice cracked. The wedding will be over. I looked at my brother. And for one moment, I saw the boy he had been before our parents crowned him. Messy hair. Scraped knees. Always forgiven before he apologized. I felt sad for him. But sadness was not the same as surrender. You sold my future for your wedding, I said quietly. Then when I asked for my future back, you let them steal my name. Ryan flinched. I didn't sign anything. No, I said. You just stood close enough to benefit and far enough to deny it. That landed harder than shouting. His eyes filled. But he looked down instead of answering. My mother reached toward me. Then stopped when Lydia's gaze moved to her hand. Mara. I made a terrible mistake, she said. I thought if we fixed the paperwork, everyone could move on. There it was again. That careful little word. Fixed. Mom, I said. You dressed Kelsey in my sweatshirt and watched her sign my name. Her face collapsed. But I did not soften the sentence. It had taken me too long to say plain things plainly. My father finally spoke. You want to ruin your mother, his voice was low. Dangerous. Almost familiar enough to pull me backward. I placed Grandma Evelyn's letter on the table between us. No, I said. I wanted parents who did not ruin me, and then ask for privacy. His eyes dropped to the handwriting. For the first time all morning. He looked away. Lydia gave them 48 hours. Their lawyer tried to negotiate the amount. The wording? The no contact period. The admission. Lydia let him talk. Then she reminded him that the notary commission had not yet received the video. That Willow Creek's insurer had not yet been fully briefed. And that forged real estate documents tended to make private embarrassment look like the gentlest option. They signed within 36 hours. Not because they became better people overnight. Because consequences finally stood in front of them with paperwork. My education fund was restored through a cashier's check wired into an account Lydia helped me set up. One my parents could not access. Legal fees were paid. The forged amendment was withdrawn. The management company voided Ryan and Kelsey's contract. The wedding did not happen at Willow Creek. For a week, the family called it a postponement. Then Kelsey's parents learned enough to stop writing checks. 2 vendors sued for unpaid balances. Kelsey moved back to her parents' house in Brentwood. and her engagement ring disappeared from her hand in every photo after that. Ryan sent me one message before the no-contact order took effect: "Hope you're happy." I did not answer. Happiness was too simple a word for what I felt. I was relieved. I was exhausted. I was grieving. Some mornings, I woke up with my jaw clenched from dreams where I was still sitting at the Sunday dinner table, waiting for permission to keep my own life. Other mornings, I made coffee, opened my laptop, and stared at Belmont's readmission page until my eyes burned. 3 months later, I enrolled in night classes. Not full-time at first. I had learned not to romanticize survival. I still needed to work. I still had bills. But when I paid my tuition from the restored account, I sat at my kitchen table for a long time with the receipt on the screen. It was not just money. It was a piece of myself returned, with interest paid in truth. Willow Creek remained mine, though I did not pretend to know immediately what to do with it. Lydia helped me restructure the ownership properly, update the records, and put professional management in place. The venue continued operating, but under terms I approved. The first event after everything was not a wedding. It was a scholarship luncheon for young women aging out of foster care. I named the scholarship after Grandma Evelyn. My mother wrote me a letter 6 months later. Not an email. Not a text. A real letter. Probably because she thought handwriting would make it sacred. She said she was sorry. But the apology kept bending back toward her pain. She missed me. She could not sleep. She hoped one day I would understand the pressure she felt. I read it twice, then placed it in a box marked, "Not decisions." My father never apologized. That was almost easier. He sent messages through relatives for a while, all carrying the same flavor of wounded pride. "Your father is getting older. Your mother cries on Sundays. Ryan is not himself. Family should not end this way." I noticed no one said family should not begin this way. They only became philosophers after the bill came due. Ryan and Kelsey did not marry. I heard that from Aunt Denise, who had slowly shifted from neutral to careful. She told me Ryan was working more, drinking less, and angry at everyone. Maybe that was growth. Maybe it was just inconvenience wearing work boots. I did not investigate. One of the quietest freedoms is not needing updates about people who once used your nervous system as furniture. A year after the conference room, I drove through Willow Creek's gates alone. It was late afternoon. Warm and golden. The kind of Tennessee light that makes even old wounds look cinematic if you are not careful. I parked near the fountain where Kelsey had recorded herself. For a moment, I saw all of it at once: the Instagram stories, the forged signature, my mother's hand on Kelsey's arm, my grandmother's letters in my lap. Then I walked inside. The manor was quiet between events. Staff moved chairs in the ballroom. Someone tested lights near the staircase. In the bridal suite, sunlight fell across a velvet couch and a mirror framed in antique gold. I stood there and thought about the bride who never used that room, the daughter who almost lost it, and the grandmother who had hidden a door inside a property record. I did not feel triumphant exactly. Triumph is loud, and what I had earned was quieter than that. I felt present. I felt named. I felt like the floor beneath my feet belonged to me, not because I had taken it from anyone, but because someone who loved me had planned for the day I would need proof that love could protect instead of consume. People like my parents count on exhaustion. They count on the decent child wanting peace more than justice. They count on the daughter who remembers birthdays, answers calls, smooths tension, and apologizes first. They teach you that being loved means being available for damage. And then they act betrayed when you finally become unavailable. For a long time, I thought boundaries were walls. Hard, cold things built by people who had given up on love. I know better now. A boundary can be a door with a lock on the inside. It can open for respect, honesty, repair, and accountability. It can stay closed to guilt, dressed up as tradition. It can protect the parts of you that once had no witness. I did not get my old life back. I got something better. I got the truth in writing. I got my education restored. I got my grandmother's voice back from under all the family noise. And I got the one thing my parents never meant to give me, the right to stop negotiating with people who only called me family when they needed access. Sometimes I still miss them. That is the part people do not understand. Healing does not erase memory. It teaches you how to hold memory without handing it the keys. I can miss my mother's laugh and still remember her at that counter. I can miss my brother as a child and still refuse to fund the man he became. I can love what should have been, without returning to what was. The last time I visited Grandma Evelyn's grave, I brought a copy of my tuition receipt and one white rose from Willow Creek's garden. I sat in the grass and told her she had been right. Education was a door. But so was ownership. So was evidence. So was silence used wisely. So was the word no. When it finally came from a place that no longer trembled. My parents sold my college fund for my brother's dream wedding. Then the lawyer asked why the venue was in my name. They thought that question would expose a technical mistake. Instead, it exposed the whole family system. And in the end, the dream wedding they bought with my future became the place where I finally got it back. In the end, I did not get the family I had spent my whole life trying to earn. I got something better. I got the truth. I got my education back. I got my grandmother's voice back from under all the guilt, pressure, and pretty family lies. And most of all, I got the right to stop calling sacrifice love when it only ever flowed in one direction. My parents sold my college fund for my brother's dream wedding. Then the lawyer asked why the venue was in my name. They thought that question would expose a mistake. Instead, it exposed the whole family system. And the wedding they bought with my future became the place where I finally took it back.